Call the meeting to order. Welcome everybody to the June 22nd, 2020 meeting of the Grafton Planning Board. This meeting of the Grafton Planning Board is being conducted entirely remotely pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Laws, Chapter 38, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. Please note that this meeting is being recorded as well as being broadcast live on the Grafton Community Television Government Channel. Participation by the public for the public comment agenda item and the public hearings has been by the Zoom Q&A feature. I think we have developed the ability to allow meeting attendees to participate by voice when called upon, which tends to be a little bit easier. You're still allowed to use the Q&A if you have something you want to submit in writing. If you are either using the Q&A or by voice, please identify yourself by name and address so we know who is speaking. And again, you can deal with it at the appropriate point in the proceedings. I'll begin the meeting by calling the roll of everybody I see here. I can see you on the screen. I'll call the roll and you can answer so that we can make sure your audio is working as well. Mr. Hassinger.
Here, what? Yes, here.
Present. Mr. Wood.
Present.
Ms. Hassinger.
Here.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Yes, sir.
Staff here with us is Goldrick, the planner.
Here, present.
And invited guests for the various hearings and proceedings are Mr. Brooke Paget.
We're here.
And I forgot to call him Adabe, our associate member.
I'm here.
And let's see who else. I'm expecting someone from Pub 122, Mr. Sharma, is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And for Alfonso Village, I have Amanda Cavalier.
Present.
Mr. Tetrault.
I'm here via phone.
Yep. I see two Brooke Pagets on the screens.
This is Sean.
A while since I've seen you, Sean, with that hat on and the beard. I didn't recognize
I hate to show you my bald spot.
Okay. Well, now that everybody's here and able to speak, we will proceed with the agenda. First agenda item is always public input. If anybody is attending from the public and wishes to speak on a matter that's not already
Chairman Robbins, sorry. I'm getting a little bit of an echo from your audio. Is there potentially a TV in the background that might be picking up on that? Or is it just me?
I'm getting an echo too.
Oh, no, I was just trying to get attention. It was, something's happened, but well, not hearing it.
It seemed to be coming from Sean Paget's computer according to my Zoom application. So
Sorry, I just muted.
Okay.
it sounded a lot better once you muted, so thank you.
All right, so our first action item would be a determination of minor modification to
Public input.
special.
We did that.
Oh, he did. Okay.
Yes. Wake up.
I call for public input, and then we got off on the discussion of the echo.
Yeah.
So we're looking at a minor modification for the Townhouse Tavern under special permit 2018-2 regarding a request for outdoor seating. So one or the other or both representative of the Townhouse Tavern can tell us what you're planning to do, and we can get into the discussion.
All right, since I probably had the least amount of feedback, yeah, so there's our little plan. We received a letter from the board of the select board informing us that they were waiving the outdoor restrictions on open container. And that if we were looking, so that we could serve outdoors. So I contacted the chief of police and he wanted to know the plan of what we were doing, which you can see my pencil kind of drawing there. The plan was to fence in a little area right behind where the tavern is now to the right of the walkway, put in 4 picnic tables and serve through a back window. He seemed to be fine with that. Then talked to the fire chief. He was fine since there's no tents. We might have some umbrellas, but the place actually gets pretty shaded after 2 o'clock. Spoke to the Board of Health. The Board of Health was fine. They gave us the code of the COVID-19 rules and regs, which we pretty much follow already. And then I spoke to Chris. We were going to be on the agenda the last planning board meeting, but I guess I couldn't make it onto the posting. So he said we should come before you. All the operation that we plan on doing is the same as before. We're not taking parking like any of the other places that are outdoors. The timing is the same. The traffic is the same. Trying to think of what else there's nothing that I can think of that would be different than the old permit, other than the fact there'd be 4 tables outside to the right of that walkway. So we're here to find out if you have any issues with anything, because we really didn't know what else you would want to know.
Yeah, I'll start off and just very briefly, with the addition of 4 tables. In this case here, you are, as you just said, you are not taking away any existing parking spaces. So that's actually a plus. And what we've done with the other similar situations, we basically said that the combination of outdoor seating that you're adding and any indoor seating that you may be able to put in, and I understand that we're starting to allow indoor seating as well, although with considerably greater spacing between tables. So I think the total capacity combining indoor and outdoor should not be greater than the previously approved indoor capacity, which doesn't sound like that was going to be a problem in this particular. This case is unusual, I will note, in that you don't really have dedicated parking spaces. We went over that at some length a couple of years back in issuing the special permit, where the discussion basically settled on there being sufficient parking available within 300 feet. So I don't see much of an issue here. As I said, the approval letter that we would normally issue would basically say that the combined total of indoor and outdoor seating should not be greater than what you were previously approved for. With that said, any questions? Any other members of the board have any questions or comments?
This is a special case because he doesn't have any parking and he's not changing. Well, he's not changing the amount of parking he has. So we want to be sure that his total capacity is inside and outside together is no greater than what we approved before. In some cases where they're putting outdoors in parking spaces, their actual total number for inside and outside together has got to be reduced by however much parking they're losing. I don't think that, it sounds like that's not a problem in this case.
Right. Anything else, Bob? Any other members of the board?
Yeah, I'll say, at least when I first saw this on the agenda, I was a little concerned about where they might be taking parking away before I saw the plans that I'm seeing on the screen now, because there's not that much right outside. But I will say, driving by, I think it was yesterday, the day before, I saw the picnic tables already kind of laid out in that spot, and I think it actually is a very well use of the space, and I'm in favor of this.
I agree with what Justin was just saying. I didn't know that there was no parking. Having seen that, I have no issues with this.
Yeah, actually, in this case, the parking situation was a big deal for the approval.
I don't think it's been a problem though.
But also some of the neighborhood was concerned about how customers interact with residential situation very nearby. And that's one thing that I did think about. We're doing this without people really having any chance to know that there will be a change and that there will be drinking going on, whatever, people sitting at tables outside. So I think we want to be sensitive to that.
Well, to respond to that, Bob, just a little, and Linda said it, we've been open almost a year and a half, and parking really hasn't been an issue because of the off hours of the operation compared to everyone else around there. So I think we are cognizant of the fact that you'd be outdoors. We don't have a lot of neighbors, but we're not going to be open till 1 o'clock in the morning. They're not going to have music blasting. It's going to be, it won't be much. It'll be more like the Inn, I guess. The Inn hasn't had any issues, I don't think, and they've been outdoors for the last month or so.
Yeah, I'm just concerned because some of us were there for your permitting, and there was more than the usual sensitivity to people in the surrounding area.
Yeah, I will say, just to the point about the parking, having driven by the tavern many times over the past year, I've seen a lot of cases where it seems like there's absolutely no parking available, and people are circling, like driving into other parking areas trying to find a spot to park. And that's something I've witnessed just driving by. So that has no bearing on a vote for this particular approval not required, but it was just a note that I have witnessed. But
when there are events, whenever again there will be events at the Great Hall and at the school, parking gets a little bit tight, and certainly for events there it does. But that, I don't think those events coincide very much with when the pageants are open. I think those are almost all earlier in the evening. And I think
the times I'm talking about are typically between, I want to say, 5:30 and then like 8 p.m.
Yeah,
those are the times I've seen it.
Getting students.
Yeah, the school is busy, quite busy at the time.
After school after school lessons.
Now, as long as the limit on the total number of customers stays the same, we've decided that many customers, we let them do it with the parking situation.
That's what we've been saying for all of these outdoor dining approvals is essentially the same. There's sort of two key points. One is the combined total of indoor and outdoor should be no greater than the previously approved amount, reduced by any parking that's being lost to the outdoor dining. In this case, 0 parking is being lost, but in other cases there has been some. And the other thing is it's temporary in nature till November 1st. On the assumption that after November 1st, people are unlikely to be wanting to dine outside. And who knows, if all sorts of other circumstances do change toward the latter part of the year, we'll deal with it to the extent that we have to. But right now, projecting through from now to the end of October, beginning of November, outdoor dining seems plausible, seems workable, except in the case of inclement weather. And now that indoor dining is beginning to be allowed, the idea that the combined total of outdoor and indoor becomes important. But I'm starting to repeat myself, so I won't.
Yeah. I am curious, some of the cases that we talked to, they were able to serve alcohol outside. I think for a while anyway, the rules were you couldn't just do alcohol, you had to be having it with food. And I think the other cases that we've talked to are that way. Now, have the rules changed, or are you considered food, and are you going to be serving with food, or how's that going to work, Brooke?
Well, we've always had food since the beginning. So we have, there's pretzels and popcorn and meatball sandwiches and pizza. So we had food. So I don't know if that came into it. I do know it came to my attention. I sent it off to Chris, you know, like in Worcester, they're allowing the breweries to have beer gardens outdoors and all they have to do is sell a pretzel, which we do already. We have pretzels as well. And I do also know that there were some bars that were throwing in a hot dog machine and that was sufficient for them to be now a restaurant, which we haven't done that, but we can get a hot dog machine if that, you know, if that's a sticking point. So I think we already have sufficient food, but nobody has, you know, there's no line in the sand from phase 2 and 3 that I've seen that says you have to have 4 sandwiches, not 2 sandwiches, and 3 pizzas, not 1 pizza. So I did talk to Phil at the Board of Health, and he doesn't consider us a restaurant, but he does recognize that we do serve food. So
yeah, that's, you know, it's a matter of some interest, I suppose. As far as this board is concerned, mainly it's a question of us approving this as a temporary modification to your plan that we've already approved. And that, you know, we've kind of covered the key points of that already. Is there anything else anybody wants to add? Anybody cares to make?
I'm just gonna say that according to the decision I'm reading from 2018, the special permit site plan, the finding 7 does say explicitly the capacity for 36 seats. And it does say food service will consist of snacks and no preparation of food. I vaguely think there might have been a modification relating to allowing prepared food, but that's very vague. Because I was not on the board for any of those, but either way, I'm willing to make a motion if the chair will have it.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve this in the same format that we've approved the others. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, call for a vote. Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Ms. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. Go for it, Brooke and John.
Good luck, you guys.
I'm going to unmute for a second just to say thank you.
yeah, I unmuted too to say thank you. So
Thank you
all
for
right, thank you.
with us.
Stay safe.
All right, moving on then. We have one more outdoor dining request. This is from Pub 122. And if I'm not mistaken, this is a situation similar to one we previously dealt with where there is no active special permit or site plan approval to be modified. So it's a bit more informal in that sense that we're talking about approving a modification to, I think we called it a modification to a grandfathered use.
Correct, yep.
How we
And
worded
it's tied mainly to the location, the address, so.
So let's talk about what we have proposed here. Again, fairly straightforward, I think.
I believe the owner's here and they want to give a brief overview of what they're proposing.
Yes, I'm here. I wasn't sure if you guys were discussing it in between you or should I need to jump in?
Yep. Yeah, if you want to just give us a brief overview of what you're proposing, kind of just how the other owner described in the previous application, just how the flow is going to go and how it's going to work with parking and any other information.
Yes, sure. So this is Ricky Sharma from 215 Worcester Street, Pub 122. As you know, it's only the pub in that location that is still in business. And beside us is only the Ultramart convenience store. And we have at that location well over parking spaces to accommodate for our clients. And our proposal in front of the board was for us to allow outside seating. And right now we are only doing umbrella services because we were supposed to be on the agenda for the last meeting but for some odd reason, we never made it to that meeting agenda. So today we have the opportunity, thanks to the Board of Selectmen and the town officials, to put us on the agenda today. So what we are proposing is for us to have outside seating available for our customers. Since this pandemic, we only been doing takeout, which has restricted us from doing what we used to do from the financial point of view. And we are only looking for about, you know, nothing more than what is allowed by the town. We were just thinking about putting a 20 by 10 tent, just because under the umbrellas we are still doing outdoor seating, but when as we can see, for the last 3-4 days we had the brutal weather, so we were wondering if we are allowed to put up a tent, which is not going to be in ground or anything. It's going to be temporary. It's going to be held by cinder blocks. So we will not be digging any holes or anything. It will be, but at the same enough under it, if rain supports, if it is too hot out there, so people can sit under it and enjoy them in the small town of Grafton that we live in and we have business in.
How big did you say that tent is?
It's 20 feet by 10 feet.
Well, the sketch that I'm looking at here, I'm pretty sure it's more than that. Oh, well, it's hard. I don't know. Yeah.
24 by 30.
Yeah. Oh, does it say it there someplace?
Yes.
24 by 30.
There should be dimensions right on that sketch.
Yes.
Yeah, 20, 30. So it depends on the tent we get. So originally my plan was they don't make anything bigger than 30 by 10. So I think I drawn the sketch according to that. So let's say if we do find the 30 by 10, that's what my intentions are to get. That way we can have adequate space in between the tables, which is a minimum requirement by the state government from Mr. Baker, is 6 feet put space in between the tables.
Yeah, so I think the sketch here doesn't show the tent. The sketch here does show what looks like 12 tables of 4 seats each. That's a total of 48. And I mean, the tent, whether the tent covers all of them or some of them, whether the arrangement of tables is maybe reduced because of the limits of the size of the tent, or some tables are under the tent and some not, it probably doesn't, to me, it doesn't matter a whole lot. You know, in terms of what we have permitted in the other cases, again, the combined total of indoor and outdoor seating should be no greater than the number, the count of the indoor seating pre-COVID. So indoor seating now, to the extent that it's going to be allowed, is going to be reduced from the original capacity. So, and here again, so I think we would be looking at the same sort of rule about the combined total of indoor and outdoor seating. In this case, we are covering some parking spaces, but there is a lot of parking available in that same area, so that may not even be an issue. Any thoughts or comments from the board?
I had a question in terms of parking. So what's the parking situation? I didn't follow that. We are not changing anything with respect to parking? Is that what the key thing is?
Well, the proposed plan does put tables in an existing parking area, as I understand it. But to offset that plaza, that building, and around the building, there is a lot of parking that is currently effectively unused because there are not many businesses in operation. So the parking area there is sufficient to accommodate quite a few businesses. And since there's only one or two businesses currently open, without doing an exact count, I would say intuitively the available parking should be more than adequate for the whatever the combined total of indoor and outdoor dining would be under the current rules.
Yes, we have, I counted, we have 150 parking spaces as of right now. And like said, there's only two businesses open. One is mine, which is a pub, and then the Ultramart. Everything else is vacant. Nobody uses those parking spaces.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Here-
I'm good with this.
Here's a picture of situation and
If it's useful, I do have the pictures they posted of their current state with the umbrellas from Facebook that I can share, but I don't know if the board found that necessary. I just wanted to say.
no, not very helpful. But I think Chris, maybe someone was just putting there, for probably if nobody else, point out where this area is and point out where all the parking is. This is over to the left is the what do you call it?
The old bank used to be there.
Hmm?
The old bank, the dry cleaner, the eyebrow place,
Right.
the
But
TV place,
Cumberland Farms.
Cumberland Farms.
On the left side there is Cumberland Farms. Now this is towards the center of town from that, on the other side of Williams Road. And there is a pretty big chunk of parking there because there were a number of businesses in that building complex, and it's almost all empty now because of, well, there's a fire and a lot of problems. So
Okay.
there probably is enough parking, but as long as we state the same rules the way we've been stating them, you know, I think that the question is covered.
Yep.
Yeah, as long as traffic flow across in the front is not impeded, and the drawings we have don't begin to help us figure that out. You've got a driveway, you've got accesses from 2 or 3 directions right into the area where you're talking about seating people. I want to be sure that traffic flow isn't adversely impacted.
Yes, as of right now, if you talk to chief of the police, I brought him over last Wednesday. He came by. He looked at our setting. We have left more than 3-car wide space from where we roped in our outdoor seating. So at any given time, if there were 3 cars going side by side, they can easily pass. And the chief was there. He looked at it, from the chief of police I'm talking about. And he looked through everything, and he was happy with the way we set it up. We were not blocking any entrance or egress either from Worcester Street or from Joncas Ave or from Williams Road. So we designed our outdoor seating so we are not hindering anybody's entrance on egress.
Okay. Okay.
This is
Yeah,
good.
this was helpful.
Anything else from the board or anybody?
Have you spoken to the police chief for the outdoor seating and serving of alcohol, and as well as Nancy Connors from the health department?
The chief of police came by Wednesday, yes, and we talked for about 15, 20 minutes. And he gave us a rundown as to there has to be a waitress or waiter 24/7 while there are people sitting outside. So they cannot take any drinks away, or they cannot be bringing drinks into the premises from their cars or anything else, or they are not also handing it to underage. So we have a staff standing by there 24/7 while there are patrons sitting out there. So we've been following that rule. We have been following all the CDC compliance for the COVID-19 sanitizing, single-use stuff and everything. And the Board of Health, I talked to Nancy and we told her what we are doing. And we are using single-use ketchup, mayo, mustard, everything. We are not bringing anything back from the table. The only thing Chief suggested, we were going to do the plastic glasses, but then my concern was those plastic glasses they are easily transported into the car. Whereas if we provide them with our glass, we know exactly if they're taking it away or not. So we've been doing all that, and we are not serving anybody, and we are checking everybody's ID, and we are taking the empty bottles right away from the table, so nobody has a chance to pass it on to somebody who's not of age. And we are following all the protocols that we've been for the last 3 years. We've been in business in the town of Grafton.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Anybody care to make a motion?
I move the same thing as all the past ones.
Second.
Exactly.
Moved and seconded that the board approve this manner that we've approved the others, same conditions and et cetera. Any,
Second? Did you get it? You have a second now if you did.
we got a second. All right, with no further discussion, call for a vote. Mr. Hassinger,
Aye.
Mr. Wood,
Aye.
Ms. Hassinger,
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman,
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. You're good to go from our point of view. And thank you very much for taking the time to come before us and get this taken care of.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you, all the gentlemen. Thank you, the Board of Health, and thank you, the town. Appreciate it.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's no gentleman.
Prabhu, we should try their Indian food. It's good.
Thank you.
It is good.
Appreciate it.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, we like their Indian food.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Good luck. Bye-bye.
My hair may be short, but I'm not.
Lady and gentlemen, I add to that.
Moving on with our agenda then.
All the proper protocols, right?
It is now just past 7:30, so it's our public hearing time. And I'll begin with our first scheduled public hearing. Well, before I do that, let me just announce for the benefit of anybody who might be interested in some of the other public hearings that we have several public hearings for which the applicant is waiting for review or analysis or decision, and have thus requested that their hearing be continued with no discussion this evening. So the hearings that we will not be holding tonight, except for the sole purpose of granting the applicant's request for continuation, are items B through F on our agenda, namely major residential special permit and site plan approval at 124R North Street. That is going to be postponed. The major residential special permit and definitive plan approval at 18 Carroll Road is going to be postponed. The special permit and site plan approval at 274 Providence Road is going to be postponed. And the request for special permit and site plan approval at 80 Snow Road lot number 2 is going to be postponed. So the only, right now, unless I've missed something late breaking, we have two hearings that we are actually going to be conducting. One is the one we are about to begin with, which is 100 Westboro Road, also village mixed use. And then the initial hearing for 80 Snow Road lot number 3, which I know is going to be, is not going to be completed tonight because of some pending review and approval through the conservation, but we will likely be able to begin that process tonight. So let's get into the substantive hearings and then we'll go back, circle back and continue the others. So 100 Westboro Road, DNF and Afonso Builders. Let's have an update on where you were at with that. I believe that there's still some pending review from the Conservation Commission, but you guys can give us an update on where you're at and where we need to go.
Sure. Good evening. Again, it's Amanda Cavalieri with Garrier and Howland. Here on behalf of DNF Alfonso Builders, the applicant. On with us also, just in case any questions arise. Looks like we have Rebecca Brown, who's with Greenman Peterson. They conducted the traffic study, so if there's any questions or comments on that, we can certainly address those. And we also have Scott Richardson with GRLA Architects, and they can help with any type of comments regarding the architectural drawings. So it's been a while since we've been in front of the board with a little bit of an update. So we'll give you a rundown of everything that's been changed, as well as a quick overview just to refresh anybody that's new to the public hearing. So if possible, can we bring up the layout?
Yeah, sorry, it's just taking a little bit of time to load on my
Okay. No problem. So as the applicant's looking to propose a mixed-use development that would be a total of 5 buildings. They would be 3-story buildings. There would be 23 one-bedroom units, 78 2-bedroom units, and 4 townhouses that have 2 bedrooms each. And those are on the residential, the full-time residential is the bottom 3 buildings. And then the townhouses to the right. And then in the front off of Westboro Road, those units would have a mix of the 1 and 2 bedroom units, as well as the first floor would be commercial retail on both of those units. So each building would be 7,000 square feet per building for a total of 14,000 square feet of retail available right off of Westboro Road. Since we've last been in front of the board, we've gone through Conservation Commission, pending approval for an order of conditions, as well as received comments back from Graves and the town planner, as well as Conservation Commission. And some of the items that have been updated are as follows. The stormwater management system was reviewed by Graves, and we've addressed all the comments to date, with the exception of we are requested to do 2 additional test pits out in the detention pond, which is over on the southwest side of the site plan. There's a new detention pond that's going to be utilized for both the subdivision that's abutting the property, as well as the mixed use development. That detention pond, we're scheduled to do those test pits this coming Thursday with Graves Engineering witnessing the test pits. And that's just because the stormwater basin had been enlarged a little bit from the initial layout for the subdivision. And then the other items that need to be updated is on the site plan for the drainage utilities is labeling the contact units or water quality units for the stormwater system, just to clarify which unit goes where on the site. As far as the layout goes, the layout has generally remained the same, with the exception of the townhouses. We were required to move the townhouses back slightly to allow for a 22-foot length, overall length for the driveway, so we didn't overhang the sidewalk. And we've also clarified the vertical granite curbing versus vertical concrete. The vertical granite would be at all the roundings, and vertical I think we sloped granite, I apologize, sloped granite on the remainder of the property. Also, one of the beginning hearings, we were asked to notify, or requested to notify 20 and 122 Westboro Road to let them know of the project. And if there were any questions or concerns regarding screening, questions on the project, that they could certainly contact Gary and Howland or DNF Alfonso Builders for any questions or additional screening requirements that they may have. To my understanding, we have not received any feedback or responses, but the letters were sent at the recommendation of the board. And if we can go to drawing 8 of 13, the landscaping plan, please. Right in the center of the development, there's a pocket park, which questions had come up as far as what would be included in there. And the pocket park is really going to be a lawn park with a walkway through the center of it. And I believe we have some bike racks and benches in the area as well, but more of a walking trail. And we have the walking trail that connects from Institute Road to the development and to the subdivision as well for through traffic and to promote, additional foot traffic around the retail areas. And the last item that is coming to mind right now is the traffic study. We did conduct a full traffic study that was Greenman Peterson, and Rebecca Brown can certainly, if she doesn't mind, talking about the conclusions or the recommendations that we had provided. But other than that, we didn't receive any comments from Graves or the town traffic study, so we don't know if there's anything additional. But in the end, we're looking for, even if it's a conditional approval of the plans, as there are minimal outstanding items, more of clerical updates and additions besides the test pits that are being conducted this Thursday. That's all I got.
All right. Any questions, comments from the board? Would anybody like to hear I haven't had a chance to review some of the submitted information, so I'm a bit lax on that. Any questions? Anybody interested in specific details from the applicant? Prabhu?
I would like to understand the traffic study. I know, as Amanda said, someone else is there. If you can have a high level walkthrough, it's about 100+ pages, right? The traffic study. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, there are 2 points of entry and exit, one from the Institute Road and one from the Westboro Road. When you conducted the traffic study, I'm guessing you factored in traffic in and out of both these points of exit entry. So any help, if you can help us come up to speed, that would be nice.
Sure. Yes. Hi, this is Rebecca Brown from Greenman Peterson. So we did prepare a traffic impact and access study, and I can go through it with you to whatever level of detail that you would like us to. Or I can just kind of walk through the conclusions a little bit, if that's kind of what you're interested in hearing about. The traffic study that we did, as was asked, did look at the 2 different driveways. So the study area that we looked at for the traffic study actually included the intersection of Westboro Road and Waterville Street, which is actually kind of 3 separate intersections with the way that intersection is oriented. It also included Westboro Road at Institute Road, Westboro Road at Pine Street, and the 2 site driveways onto Westboro Road and Institute Road. And with this, we looked at a safety review as well as a traffic operations review. The safety review looked at the collision history at all of these study area intersections for the latest 3-year period that was on file with Mass DOT, which was 2015 to 2017. And all of those study area intersections experienced 2 collisions or fewer. during that 3-year period, 2 collisions or fewer per year, sorry, and a crash rate that was lower than or consistent with the statewide averages for all 3 of the study area intersections. Along with that, we also did look at sight lines exiting both of the site driveways, as well as exiting Institute Road onto Westboro Road. And the sight lines at all 3 of those locations did exceed AASHTO recommendations for safe stopping sight distance and intersection sight distance. So stopping sight distance would be a driver approaching the intersection, being able to see a vehicle that's slowing down and turning into the driveway or pulling out of the driveway. And intersection sight distance is for the driver who is sitting in the driveway looking in either direction to see oncoming traffic. And so all 3 of those locations met the AASHTO requirements for both stopping sight distance and intersection sight distance. We also collected traffic counts at each of those study area intersections back in February of 2020. So they were done prior to COVID-19 impacting traffic volumes. We collected those during the weekday morning, weekday evening, and Saturday midday peak periods. And then we seasonally adjusted those traffic volumes up to an average month condition, consistent with Mass DOT guidelines, and then also projected them out to a 7-year design horizon, so out to a 2027 future year. And with that, we included traffic from multiple other developments as well, including the Institute Road residential development that's just to the south, the development at 124 North Street, and at 135 Westboro Road, which is a marijuana dispensary at that location. We also estimated traffic that would be generated by the proposed development based on Institute of Transportation Engineers, or ITE, trip generation rates for a multifamily housing development, for an office use, and for retail use. And based on this information, it reflected that the site would generate approximately 172 new vehicle trips in the weekday morning peak hour. And so a vehicle trip is either one vehicle entering or exiting the site. So each car that comes in generates 2 trips, one when they enter, one when they exit. So we estimated 172 trips in the morning, 106 trips during the weekday evening peak hour, and 143 trips during the Saturday midday peak hour. And we distributed these out over the study area intersections using a journey to work model that was created from US Census data on the place of residency for people who work in Grafton, for the office development, and then for the place of employment for residents of Grafton for the residential component. And then for the retail component, we based that on a population gravity model. And when we distributed the traffic out over the study area intersections, it showed that on any of the study area roadways, we were increasing traffic volumes by somewhere between 9 and 56 vehicles per hour. So that's roughly 1 additional vehicle every 1 to 7 minutes passing through any of the study area intersections. Once we had distributed this traffic, we completed a capacity and queue analysis of each of our study area intersections, which indicated that the intersection of Westboro Road and Waterville Street, and at the intersection of Westboro Road and Institute Road, that all of the movements at those 2 intersections were operating at an acceptable level of service, a level of service D or better, during all of the time periods, with queues of 1 vehicle on any of the approaches, and delay increases as a result of the project of less than 5 seconds on any movement. So there's very little impact at any of those intersections as a result of the project. There was one intersection within the study area that did experience a level of service F during the weekday morning peak hour, and that was at the Westboro Road and Pine Street intersection, where the southbound left turn coming out of Pine Street in the morning is at a level of service F. But at that location, the volume to capacity ratio is less than 1. So that's indicating that there is additional capacity at that intersection to be able to handle additional traffic. For all of the other time periods, that intersection operated at acceptable levels of service. And it saw, as a result of the proposed development, up to a 7-second increase in delay on any movement and up to a 1 vehicle increase in queue on any of the movements. We did complete a signal warrant analysis at that location to assess whether or not a signal is warranted there. And it did indicate that none of the warrants are currently met based on the traffic volumes at that intersection. We also looked at the operations of the 2 site driveways, which indicated that both driveways would operate at a level of service B or better during both of the time periods, or excuse me, during all 3 time periods. There were some transportation demand management measures that are being proposed to help to alleviate some of the traffic, and that includes installation of bicycle racks in front of each of the buildings that could be used by the residents, employees, and retail customers, as well as a commitment to work with the DPW to provide a contribution towards sidewalk construction in the area to be able to provide sidewalk connections to the North Grafton Elementary School and to Pine Street as well for access up to the train station. So overall, the study concluded that there was very minimal impact at any of the study area intersections as a result of the additional traffic generated by the project. And there were adequate sight lines at all of the site driveways, and none of the intersections indicated that there was any safety concern based on historic crash experience. If there are specific questions with the traffic study, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Brown. You covered a lot of the questions that I was going to ask with respect to the cross traffic study impact analysis. And if I got that right, I think you said that there was a traffic study that factored in the development south in Institute Road and the RMR that's coming across the street, and there was one more. So I'm assuming that when you factored that in for the cross traffic study analysis, you would have taken what are the potential increases of traffic because of all these other projects.
We did, right? Yes. Yeah, so there are a number of other development projects that we included within our no build analysis. So before our project even gets constructed, we had included traffic from the Institute Road residential development that I mentioned that's just to the south that contains 46 residential homes. And then 124 North Street, there's another 32 lot subdivision that's proposed there. And then the 135 Westboro Road development, which is a marijuana dispensary. We were informed of a number of other developments that are kind of ongoing in various stages within the town. But each of these either had very low trip generation through this particular area. So we assumed that they would be included in our background growth rate. So we used a 1% per year background growth rate to adjust traffic volumes out to 2027 conditions anyway. So for a lot of the smaller developments, we assumed that the traffic would be included within that 1% per year growth rate.
Thank you. And you said the peak hour was 172 in the morning, 172 vehicles during the peak hour. And likewise in the evening was around 100-ish during the peak hour?
Correct, yes.
Okay. What was the peak hour in the morning? I don't see it I'm not able to see it on the traffic study. It just loads the first page. I can't see the rest now.
Oh, yes. So if you go to page 17, that shows the trip generation for the
And the morning peak hour, what time to what time was the morning peak hour?
It
Likewise
was
in the evening?
counted from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the morning. And then in the weekday evening, it was counted from 4 o'clock to 6 o'clock p.m. And we took the peak 1 hour that occurred within that time slot. And then on the Saturday midday, it was collected from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Okay, and during that period is where I understood that the impact with all these factors pulled together was less than 5 seconds delay.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yep. With the exception of at the Pine Street intersection, that one was a 7-second increase in delay.
The Pine City intersection coming away from the station, turning left towards
Turning
Dawson.
left. Yep. And for the most part, it's because we're increasing through traffic that adds additional delay to the left turn. So because there is more through traffic, they have to wait a little bit longer to get out. There's less
Okay.
gaps in traffic for them to get out.
And the signal warrant study was at that intersection, or was it at a different intersection?
Yes, the signal warrant was done at the Pine Street and Westboro Road intersection because that was the only one where there was a level of service F that
Okay.
occurred, and that was just during the weekday morning. But the signal warrant analysis did show that the volumes did not meet any of the 3 warranting conditions for installation of a signal. So there is an 8-hour warrant, which has certain thresholds that need to be met for at least 8 hours of the day. And it was only met for 4 hours of the day. And then there is a 4-hour warrant where there's certain volume conditions that need to be met for at least 4 hours of the day, and only 3 hours of the day exceeded those. And then there is also a peak hour warrant where certain volumes need to be exceeded for any given hour throughout the day, and there was not an hour that exceeded.
Okay. Thank goodness that we don't need a signal there. I can tell you that.
I'll just throw this out. It's purely speculative at this point.
Okay.
But there are future potential developments in the Pine Street area that may generate enough additional traffic to meet at least one of the warrants. But that's purely speculative at this point. And
Yes, and we are aware of an RFP that is out there for development along Pine Street to the north that could potentially warrant that signal, but at the present time, it is not met.
Right. So if that does come about, it will come about when that project gets developed, if it ever does. It's still, we hope it will, but it's some years into the future. And yes, that may trigger a signal at that intersection, but that's sometime in the future.
Yeah.
Doesn't affect this project.
I'm concerned about what's going to happen there because there are actually, I think, 2 fairly good prospective things happening just up Pine Street. One is the land the state is transferring for a project on the east side. I'd call it the east side. And now the town is got a project at 8 Pine Street on the other side, on the part of the land in Centec Park, that the talk right now is 308 units, residential units. Together, that seems to me that it's going to produce a fair amount of action. And I've also heard agitation for more parking at the train station, which would also increase traffic. So I'm kind of concerned. I don't know, as you say, it's going to make it more expensive to get those other projects built because somewhere along the line, someone's going to exceed the limits, get us up to the warrants, aren't they? I mean, you're fairly close to the some of the warrants already, without all of that.
As far
there's the famous UPS project, which
there's a lot of there are potentials, but as far as this project is concerned, that really can't be allowed to affect the design of this project because that's just too speculative. Any other questions?
I'm concerned about the left turn, particularly the left turns off of Route 30. Because that's a single lane road, a single lane in each direction. So every time someone wants to turn left into it, all the through traffic backs up. And I hope we don't make it too much worse, but you've got a good many units in there and businesses too. So,
And-
plan for the best.
Are they-
And if I may, Rebecca, the left-hand turn at Route 30, that was factored in from the subdivision, correct? There's changes from the previous subdivision plan. Am I correct on that, or?
Yeah, for the left turn, you mean,
Yes.
coming up? Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
But my left turn is, I'm driving down Route 30 and I want to turn left into this project, not into the road, but in the project has a driveway, right?
Okay.
And
Yes.
You're westbound on 30 and you want to turn into this project.
I'm heading, yes, westbound. I'm heading towards the pot store. Yeah. So I'm concerned. I think there's going to be a traffic light there one of these days at Pine Street, but I think we're still, as long as it's only one lane each way on 30, I think it's gonna, maybe that's good. There'll be a lot more action out there. Maybe that'll be good.
We shall see eventually.
So what do we have to do now?
Yeah. Well, what are we up for?
So any
I do have
other,
one comment question, but not about the traffic study.
Yeah.
My question, I think I may have brought it up our last one of these meetings, but it's been quite a while back that I don't remember for certain. But the trails that go in Institute Woods there, from skimming maps, it looks sort of like at least one of the trails goes very close to the southwest portion of this lot, which is right where you have that walkway and the detention basin.
Mhm.
My question is do you know if those trails go close enough to that like corner of the property that it would make sense to try to connect those trails to that walking path, such that I know the trails go to the other, to the opposite end of the North Street, I'm sorry, not North Street, the North Grafton Elementary School. So the trails do connect, that far. I can imagine if there is a good connection that there'd be some families who may want to walk those trails either to or from an event at the school or something.
Yeah,
So that's just a thought I have. So
no, if you could pull up the proposed site plan real quick again, Chris, if you don't mind. So to connect over to the elementary school, we did talk about that as some of the traffic measures down the line is possibly connecting and working with the town to connect those two. So I know it's been in discussion and I believe it was one of the traffic, to promote that walking aspect of the project.
because right now there is a trailhead on Institute Road, which is not that convenient for people to actually enter, but it's still there.
Mhm.
That enters the main trail network in that little area. But I think that connection goes through the subdivision that borders this project, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that
was
connects.
just the
Mhm.
that was just the overall thought. Like if there is an easy way to connect to one of the existing trails, that might be worth doing, at least in my mind, from where you have that like 8-foot wide paved walking path, like kind of that little area between the cul-de-sac of the subdivision next door, and then right where the cursor is there.
Yep.
Yeah, possible for the subdivision kids to walk to the school on that now, or will be with what we have now, right? And kids in this subdivision should also be able to do that. We don't want anybody who's walking to go out on Route 30 if we can avoid it.
Would be through on an everyday basis, but either way, it was certainly something that should be available to families should they so choose. That's my feeling.
So we can certainly look into that and we can talk with Dominic and work with the town as far as an option. Again, looking at the times of year it's going to be used. You have maybe late fall and early spring, but during the winter with, you know, and then it becomes a maintenance connection. I apologize for an orientation where the school is in comparison to the.
Yeah, the school is a bit southwest of the 100 West Street property. No, yeah, 100 Westboro Road property, excuse me.
Okay.
I think the trail more or less parallels Route 30 from that cul-de-sac across. It just, the school is set back from Route 30 more or less that sort of distance, so it's roughly straight across.
Yeah, because I know right now we connect the subdivision and the mixed use development through that walking path. So if the subdivision can access it, the mixed use can access it.
I just gave Chris a link to a visualization of the trails on the site Trail Forks that our Grand Trust Department uses. That I don't, if it comes up right for him on his screen, he can share it. Just to help orient.
See that? There.
Oh, yeah. I think, you know, we really have an amazing number of trails in town.
Mm-hmm. Although they're different.
I know.
But this mapping of this is.
Yeah, it was just hard to kind of gauge, at least to me, visually between that and our GIS and your plans to know like exactly where does, you know, these trails come in proximity to that corner. So I wasn't sure there, but that was what I had available to me.
This is bigger.
Yeah, I want to say, I'm just trying to glancing through the plans. I just can't remember just where it was, but I want to say that with the subdivision, we did see a proposed trail connection over toward the school. I think it connected into the subdivision just below that cul-de-sac that goes up toward the mixed use. I don't know that it's not that the trail was all developed necessarily, but we sort of, I think we had basically provided an easement or a space through which a trail could go.
Okay.
But I'd have, you know, it would take a little bit more digging through the records to remember exactly how that ended up.
Well, I am looking at the traffic impact study, and it does say as one of those traffic demand management measurements is the sidewalk connection that Rebecca had talked about to partner with the Grafton Department of Public Works to provide a contribution towards constructing a sidewalk along the southerly side of Route 30 to the North Grafton Elementary School and along the northerly side of Route 30 to Pine Street to provide access to the Grafton MBTA station. So that is one of the TDM measurements as part of the traffic study that was proposed by the applicant. So it is taken into consideration and part of the project.
Yeah, and I can certainly imagine there'll be at least a handful of families that would much prefer to walk on a sidewalk rather than go through a hiking trail. that's certainly a likelihood. And at least in my mind as well, there's no pressure on the site owners to have that cleared when in case of snow or other types of things like that. That wouldn't be, in my mind, a requirement for providing connection.
Yeah, I do think though that kids walking along Route 30, okay, but having an alternative is better. I remember when I was walking to school about 1,000 years ago, I always took the shortest path, no matter what it was, through backyards, through whatever it took. And so at least having provision doesn't have to necessarily be anything terribly big and formal, but a reasonable.
And our elementary school goes up to second grade for our elementary school.
At the moment.
So, at the moment.
We keep changing what grades are in what schools.
True. But yeah, I don't recall, other than people who live, within like a quarter mile of the entrance to that school, people that walk there as a family, from my memory at present. But doesn't mean that if people did move into, this development, that they may choose to walk there because it is relatively close, especially if there's a trail connection. So. I just want to keep those up.
And again, as far as the project discussions go, it is something that the applicant's willing to work with the town on, but I don't believe is part of the design associated with this project. It's more of to work with the town Department of Public Works and try to come up with a plan, whether it's a contribution or assistance or anything like that. But that's part of the traffic demand management measurements and conclusions that the applicants agreed to.
I'm hearing a couple of things. One is, as a traffic demand management provision, we're looking at supporting some of the development of sidewalks along Route 30.
Mm-hmm.
We have a walking connection between this mixed-use development and the subdivision.
Mm-hmm.
Subdivision, as I said, I'm almost positive we ended up making sure that the subdivision design left open the possibility, at least, of a trail connection over to the school.
Mm-hmm.
So I think things are pretty well covered, particularly in the context of this project anyway. We've got the connection to the subdivision. We've got the expectation of developing sidewalks along Route 30.
Mm-hmm.
And through the subdivision, we're likely to have connections elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be sure that we have a good, whatever easements, whatever's, so that we can tie both together in the context of where that trail could be. It's harder to get easements later than it is earlier, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the trail connection to the school was into the subdivision, not into this project.
Right, but I want to have a way to get from this project to the connection out of the subdivision.
Right, so this project was
convenient, and close.
I think this project is proposing a walking connection to
Correct. Yes, both developments are done by the same applicant, and they're planning on being connected. So there's the cross connection between the two.
I would think that that'd be a benefit to both projects.
Yes.
As I recall, when we were discussing the subdivision, we were looking ahead to the development of this project.
Mm-hmm.
And both from the subdivision point of view and this project point of view, both sides of that, there's the walkable connection is highly desirable.
Yes.
And as you know, it has been provided for on this plan.
Yes.
Just a general,
go ahead.
One quick question. So in terms of maintenance of the road inside and the snow removal and all that is private, right? It won't be town's responsibility.
Dominic, do you have that? I believe it's
Well, the snow removal and the condos, and also in the buildings, that's it's private. The roads, the town, the houses, it's normally be the town after we turn the roads to the town. Like every place else, that's the way it is. We have a walk connected to the the houses to the condos. We have the walk, connect everything one to the other. We had a thing to go connect, to do a trail from the subdivision to the pad, like they talked to the townland that was done with the subdivision.
Mhm.
But that's how we stand, the same things. We don't try to change anything. We just try to keep everything the same. We wanted to work both projects together because one size, like the subdivision, we're gonna have an extra fill. And where the building's gonna go, the apartments, you're gonna need a fill. We needed to work together so we could move the fill from one side to the other. Now, without that, we can almost do it.
Yeah, but I think with respect to Mr. Dave's question, it's the subdivision roads are normally expected to become town roads.
Exactly, yes.
And the roadways within this mixed-use development are typically those things do not become town-maintained roads.
Well, that's what my question was. Thanks.
That's what I said here.
And just to slightly expand on what I was saying as well, just if I can see on some drawing where in the subdivision, that corner that would connect to the trail in these exhibits, even if it's just an informative zoomed in section of a plan, something that, like one page or one image just shows like in the cul-de-sac, like where that connection is, that would be helpful. It's not, I wouldn't say it's a requirement of mine. It would be just something that I think would be helpful to have in this project's documents. And I do just want to, as a completely different topic, just call out that I think the addition of that little lawn park was a really good idea. And I do like that.
Your first point was my concern. I've been trying to understand what we're going to end up with better, both in the subdivision and in this project. The drawings are, kind of split there, and there isn't a lot of detail that I can make out, at least the way they get to me. So sort of a little snapshot of that area across both projects to see how this little thing fits together would be helpful.
We do show that on the proposed layout. Can you bring and possibly zoom in on that section?
Is that on the page sheet 10 of the site plans? Is that what we're looking at?
I'm looking at it yet.
Yeah, I don't see it on the screen yet, but I'm on my end.
Actually, I believe it's 7 of 13 has a profile, or you could go to 4 of 13. 3 of 13. I think 3 of 13 really.
Yeah,
Shows it down
that shows.
Down at the cul-de-sac.
Yes. To me, that shows how like this development connects to the cul-de-sac. I'm hopeful that I can find something that shows not only that connection, but the actual like location of where we would have a connection to the trail. So we can see like where in the cul-de-sac the trail might connect to, that kind of detail.
Yeah, and I'd like to see detail in through there, including the cul-de-sac and the exit from the cul-de-sac, where that goes and so on, in one good drawing. That's the thing I'm having trouble with, partial information here. If we go to the subdivision, we don't know anymore, and it wouldn't be too hard to make a little bit of a drawing.
We can certainly do a proposed sketch. I would believe that it would be subject to change or have quite a bit of impact once we work with the DPW, depending on what their thoughts are. So it would be more just concept as far as possibilities, but it would be something that would need to be coordinated with the DPW.
At the very least, you could show where easements are, where the options will be, so that we know that we'll have the easements, or whatever is required.
So I would suggest if we do get a concept plan, then we could, as a condition of approval, just hinge that concept plan with essentially DPW final approval. If the applicant was willing to address it that way, and potentially even have one more board review of the final plans for comment, but that we would just accept the concept plan under this provision and move from there.
I'm not quite sure what we currently have for the subdivision part of the connection to the new project. I seem to remember there being some unclarity since this project wasn't, underway yet. So enough.
From the, I guess I would just want to make sure we're understanding what's being looked for as part of potentially reviewing for a conditional approval with the connection between the two developments. Again, it's in the traffic demand management. Some of the recommendations and that the applicant is committed to working with the town is something that could potentially be a condition on approving the plans, that we can show greater detail of approximate locations or ideas, but without having further discussions with the DPW as far as what they're actually looking for, where the applicants agreed to work with the town. The easements would come at that point, and actively work with the town at that time.
Yeah, and when we get an easement, we can approve the plan. We have some things going on in town where something was supposed to happen in the future and it hasn't, and there are people in court. I want to be sure that we've done what we should. The plan shows what we need to show, and it's committed. I don't see, we've had trouble with this in the subdivision, not getting the detail we want there. Now we're having trouble here. I don't understand. It's just a little connection. I don't understand.
No, and we're not
understand why it's a problem.
No, we're just trying to move things. I guess just keep moving things forward. That's all.
I think I hear two related topics being discussed here. One, I'm hearing some members of the board interested in seeing more clearly the connection between this development and the subdivision.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing, and that's sort of is very, very, very localized. And then there's the question of working with DPW to come up with some plans for sidewalks on Route 30. They're both deal with walking, but they're two different aspects of this project. And clearly, without spending the time to work through with DPW what the most beneficial arrangement of sidewalks on Route 30 would be, that's something that's going to take some time, as you pointed out. The other detail, sort of on the opposite side, is the connection between this project and the subdivision, which is it's at least sort of sketched on the plan, but it's not. And I think what I hear some people saying is it's not very clear what that is exactly, what it's going to look like, and that is not necessarily a DPW topic. That's just you've got Dominic's in control of both sides of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so that for that, I think I'm hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, board members, I think I'm hearing a desire just to see that highlighted a bit more on the plans,
Yes.
And if there remains some uncertainty about exactly where it will go, that, that can be noted, but I think I hear the board saying they'd like to see that kind of highlighted so that we all are clear that there is a connection there, and we pretty well understand what it's going to look like.
We can do that.
I could probably answer that, David. Between the subdivision and the corners, there have to be a 20-foot easement going through there because we have the sewer going through there. When you have a sewer going through it, normally you have a 20-foot easement go right through it because the sewer going from there to the other, to the houses, to the subdivision. So then that's why you have to have a 20-foot easement. And the 20-foot easement, you could put a walkway, a bigger one or a smaller one. But that's right through there. That's the way it goes. The sewer comes right straight from the corners right through it.
Yeah, so it's basically in that easement that you would be putting the walkway.
Exactly. That's a 20-foot easement. You could put a walkway. If you want, you could put a problem walkway, the same 8-foot walkway like you have in the back, going all the way to Institute Road. I don't see a problem with that. But certain stuff, it's because you have the 20-foot easement going through it.
Yeah, I don't see a problem. I think the easement it's in the right place, and you kind of show the walkway there.
See the easement right through there. So I know if you see the sewer coming through there.
Yep.
And where does that connect
That comes
to the walking areas for the residents?
Well, there's a walkway in the residential coming right through that. You could bring it all the way through the cul-de-sac,
right,
all the way around. You don't see
And
it. You don't see the subdivision. There's a walkway. I could see it. If you look at it on the right, there's a walk like where the arrow is, right?
Right there.
Right there. I know could see it.
Yeah, he's showing.
There's a walkway right there. You bring it right in, you connect the one to the other.
You can see the walkway slightly more clearly on the
You
previous.
see the walkway right through here, right here. Walk right through it and right in.
Yeah, you can see it more clearly on the page that Chris is not showing because the sewer line is
You
not.
see where the hardware is now, right now?
You see Oak Hill Cottages, yes.
Yeah.
So let's see. Would it help some of the board members if that was simply labeled? And it's a pair of lines there, and you can kind of guess that it's a walk.
Well, could we get a 1 to 40 or 1 to 80 drawing of that area from on both sides of the dividing line so that we can get an idea of, a clear drawing of the whole connected thing?
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
And I think with that, we can stop beating this poor thing.
Perfect.
It's an easy thing to do.
Yes.
That's why I asked.
Now that I think we finally figured out
Thank you.
what the board would be comfortable seeing. Okay, is there anything else from the board on this?
No.
Do we have any issues left open at this point? I know Amanda had talked about just a couple of details that are going to be revised on plans.
Yes. The only outstanding item that was unable to be completed before today's meeting was test pits that are scheduled on Thursday and with Graves witnessing it in the detention pond in the areas that it's been enlarged. So we have 2 test pits scheduled for Thursday morning.
So as a suggestion, if we're basically close to being completed with our review of this, if there are, other than there being some plan revisions and potentially including the what we just talked about with respect to achieving more clarity on the sidewalks. What if we were to close the hearing tonight? Staff would begin work on drafting a decision. Our next meeting is 3 weeks from tonight, at which time we would be in a position to review a draft decision. Now, where I'm going with this is to say that as a rule, we like to have all the latest documents in hand before we close the hearing. Get everything on record, leaving as little as possible up to future review and approval. And because it's a minimum of 3 weeks before the board can issue a decision, an approach we've taken more than once in recent months is to leave the hearing open to receive documentation updates so that they become part of the record. But although we've left the hearing open, we have enough information to where we can direct staff to, if the staff believes they know enough about, they're in a position to do so, to draft a decision. So what could happen if things work out this way is we leave the hearing open, come back in 3 weeks, we have a draft decision to work with, we have updated documents submitted on the record. The board could very well complete the hearing process in very short order and deliberate on a decision and get a decision issued. So in that respect, if staff is in a position to begin work on a decision, and I see Chris sort of nodding his head, then what I would suggest then is that we continue the hearing one more time, get staff working on a decision so that we can come back in 3 weeks, wrap up the hearing, more or less a formality, we hope, and wrap up a decision.
Yeah, as long as Chris can follow along with what comes in and make sure that Graves is happy and so on, obviously.
Yes, and that's another reason for keeping the hearing open, just in case.
And if they were to ask us to do that, ask for a continuation to that, we could declare a victory and go home here.
So I don't want to rush things through. I also don't want to delay things any more than absolutely necessary. We've done this more than once, like I said recently, where we kept the hearing open just to gather up the last bits of information for the record. But while we've left it open, we're far enough along that we can draft a decision.
Yes.
Yeah, all we need is a request from the applicant.
Yes, we would request to keep the hearing open with the intent to close at the next one. And draft the decision, so continue for 3 weeks and
I'll move that we grant the applicant's written request to continue the hearing until July 13th at 7:30 p.m. and direct staff to draft a decision with the anticipation of us closing the hearing at this next meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded that we grant the applicants a written request, which is to be received, and continue the hearing to July 13th and get to work on drafting a decision. Discussion for Boo.
So what was the comment about waiting some input from Graves Engineering? Are they done with their peer review?
So the Graves Engineering is completing some test pits, so there may be no additional comment, just as a matter of letting them finish that review.
Oh, okay. I saw the report. I see the report. I didn't know if it was completed or not. Thank you.
Yes.
Yes, I think it's the test pits, and there was, aside from the test pits, there was a minor plan revision, something.
Labeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a clerical labeling just on the plan sets. It's in the details, but it's not on the actual design plans.
That's nothing substantive unless you really mess up the label.
No,
You're not likely to do it. I mean, that just seems like something that it'd be hard to mess that up. Never say never, but it's just.
I have to move the question.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's put it to a vote. Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Ms. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. I call for the votes in the order I'm seeing them on my screen, and Justin moved on my screen.
I don't know what makes that happen.
I declare the motion carried unanimously. We will see you in 3 weeks, and we'll wrap this one up.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time.
Have a good night.
You too. All righty then. We have one more public hearing that is a new public hearing, which we can open tonight and introduce the project. I suspect that the project has some ongoing review and work to be done, but we can at least begin. So I think the clerk should be reading a legal notice. This is for 80 Snow Road, lot number 3.
Indeed. So, pursuant to sections 1.3.3 of the Grafton zoning bylaws, the planning board will hold a public hearing on Monday, June 22nd, 2020, commencing at 7:30 p.m. to consider the application for site plan approval for a detached two-family dwelling on property located at 80 Snow Road, lot number 3, as shown on Grafton Assessor's Map 28, lot 66. Said property is located in a medium-density residential R20 zone. The applicant/owner is CIL Realty of Massachusetts. Copies of the application and plan are available for public inspection on the Town of Grafton website at www.grafton-ma.gov on the Planning Department Development Projects webpage. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March stay-at-home advisory, this meeting will be conducted via remote participation. Please see www.grafton-ma.gov/planning-board for more information.
Okay, so I guess the first order of business would be for the applicant to introduce the project to the board.
Mr. Chairman, I'm James Tatro from Thompson Liston Associates, here representing CIL Realty of Massachusetts, Inc. And the application you have before you is for site plan approval of Lot 3. And the reason we are filing this is that as a proposal for the construction of a duplex that is not a use by right in that zoning district, and any use not by right requires a site plan approval filing. So that is why we have filed this application. The lot in question is on the easterly side of Snow Road. It has an area of 38,816 square feet. As one of the detail sheets on the site plan showed, we included a zoning compliance table that shows that the proposed construction would in all respects, setbacks, et cetera, meet the requirements of the zoning district. What is proposed is a duplex set back on the lot with a driveway coming in from Snow Road. And again, I should probably add that this lot was created via an A&R plan signed by the board last August. This is lot 3 of that plan. And this driveway would lead in from Snow Road to the proposed duplex. To address drainage, we would have chambers under the ground on the right side of the driveway. We submitted calculations showing that installation will reduce runoff that would otherwise have increased with the creation of impervious surface, will reduce runoff to the abutting properties, the Grafton Upton Railroad and Snow Road, to less than what is experienced pre-development. And pre-development, by the way, I want to be clear, is before there was clearing of the lot. So that's obviously a tougher comparison than right now. We received the review letter from Jeff Walsh at Graves. We will address those comments. I will, at the end of this hearing, be asking the board for a continuance to its July 13 meeting. And I just want to touch on a couple of those items and a couple of the comments that came in from abutters. And Mr. Walsh just asked for some greater detail shown about what should be done at the driveway intersections with Snow Road to improve sight distance. He asked for, will probably result in a little bigger area of pavement in front of the duplex to confirm that turnarounds for each unit are possible without any conflict with vehicles parked for the other unit. And he asked for a little more detail specifically in regard to the proposed slope behind the duplex on Lot 3. And I just want to touch quickly on a couple of the comments from that were submitted by abutters. In regard to one of them, and we actually included the flood map with the stormwater permit filing. I don't think it was included with the site plan filing as I go back and look at the list of documents. But the flood zone A is actually on the other side of Snow Road, down by elevation 309, according to the FEMA map, which is about 25 feet below these units. And one of the comments from the abutters actually probably made a good point, suggested using a wider interface of pavement with Snow Road to make turns easier. And we'll probably incorporate that in the revisions that we make to address Graves' comments. But I'll just make this brief. You know, we're proposing a duplex. About 3/4 of this driveway serving this duplex will be picked up by it's called a Vort Sentry catch basin, which is a sort of a special catch basin designed to remove total suspended solids. Before that runoff is then discharged into chambers and stone in the ground, an infiltration structure. And this drainage system, again, was looked at with respect to the 2, 10, 25, and 100-year storms. And we will prove to the peer reviewers' satisfaction that we are addressing the DEP stormwater management standards. We just looked at the immediately obviously applicable ones with regard to removal of total suspended solids. We didn't go through the entire list on this, but we will do that to the reviewer's satisfaction. And I'll just try and take any questions that you may have.
Okay. Any questions from the board at this point?
I have. Is this another just duplex residence?
How do you mean that? I'm not sure what you're getting at.
On lot 2, you need a special permit with a site plan review. Here, you're only applying for a site plan review.
Correct.
I've been asking ever since we began talking about these, how that was.
Sure. The reason is that the applicants actually had some back and forth discussion with town council. The applicants propose that the duplex is to be used by Mass Brain Injury Association, and that use has status under the Dover Amendment as an educational use, which obviates the need for the special permit. That was the opinion of town council.
Yes.
But it does not obviate the need for a site plan approval.
But I don't see any documentation of any opinion from town council. And I don't see anything in our materials that would lock down that use to limit it to only a Dover eligible one now or in the future.
We will get that information to you.
I think that absolutely needs to be part of the record of this, because it is an unusual circumstance. We don't often see that, and particularly in a case like this, I think Bob raises a good point that if this is going under the Dover Amendment, it basically, once it's built, it pretty much, I don't know. I just don't know what would happen if someone tried to convert it to a use that no longer qualified as a Dover Amendment. I think that's it.
Well, I think we're going to explore that.
Yeah, so I can't confirm that the conversation with town council did happen. I believe it was prior to the actual application, so they were looking for direction on what exactly was needed in town, and we were looking for direction from town council of if the Dover Amendment applied, which town council confirmed that it will add that to the exhibits as well.
Yeah, and I think it would be probably useful for many of us if we had something on the record to address the question of
what happens?
Once you build something under the Dover Amendment, what happens if the use no longer falls under the Dover Amendment? I think we need to be clear on the consequences of that.
I'll reach out to town council for further review. My initial impression with that would trigger a change in use, which would then come back before the board, but I'll definitely reach out to town council to confirm.
And if it came back to the board and the board didn't issue the special permit, where are we?
Yeah, that's
I think we're going to have a conversation with council.
Yes, I would agree.
I think it'd be easier to just get a special permit.
This is kind of I don't know if it's an absolutely unique situation, but generally speaking, Dover Amendment situations are, the nature of a Dover Amendment situation is that it's just inherently always going to be, it's always going to qualify. This is a case where you could very easily imagine with no physical changes, this could cease to qualify under Dover. So I think the board needs to have a good understanding of how this all could play out.
We are understanding and sympathetic of that reaction, and we will do what we can to satisfy the board.
That would be much appreciated, I'm sure. Other questions from the board about this? And we already know it's going to be, we're going to be talking about it again in the future, so we don't have to try to get all our questions answered tonight. But as much as possible, if we can at least raise the questions that occur to us, and ultimately this being a public hearing, I want to get any questions from the public as well.
Yeah.
We've discussed making a field visit for lot 2, I think, and we ought to see if we can combine, do both of these to see. I'm more and more concerned to be able to look at that, given all the comments that have come in on the 2 projects.
Yes, I will say 2 board members did visit both lots the other day. Actually, correction, two voting board members and the associate members. So 3 of us have viewed both lots, but that does not preclude additional site visits, either on your own or working through Chris to schedule something together.
What I was going to mention and ask about relates to me walking the site for that exact reason is walking the site, there's a big drop off in elevation between what looks to be the current conditions of lot 2 and the majority of lot 3. So my kind of question here is, how much is there going to be a difference in elevation between the 2 lots in the final design, and is that going to be solved by fill in this lot in particular, or is the plans are a little bit hard to deduce with the number of lines on these plans for that answer?
Sure. The answer is that let me find the floor elevations. So we have top of concrete 339 and 330. So there's about a 5-foot difference from what the grades will be around each of the 2 separate duplexes. And I just want to add just quickly, one of the comments in one of the letters from one of the abutters was asking why the approvals were being kept separate. And I just want to note that the plans do the exact opposite. We are filing separately for the lots, but all of the plans show, both duplexes show the grading on both lots. We haven't, in any way tried to keep anything separate or I don't know, do anything to make it harder to figure out what's going on with the 2. But again, to your question, the answer is that you've got about a 4 to 5 foot difference in the grades. For instance, if you look behind the duplex on lot 2, the grade shown is 338. Behind the duplex on lot 3, the grade shown is 334. A 4-foot difference between the grades in the backyards.
And I'm trying to skim to see if I see it, but my understanding is that Graves has recommended a geology engineer to also provide comments. Is that something that you're looking to arrange for us?
You're correct. Well, one of the comments from Graves was that that the 1-to-1, they would like to see a geotechnical engineer sign off on the 1-to-1 grade proposed behind the duplex on lot 3, and we will try and address that.
Because one of the things that was just how much grading difference is to be filled in there that does concern me a little bit is potential for even partial landslides that might obstruct or impact the railroad tracks. That's one thing that, like, even if just a little bit of fill slips out to there without actually affecting the building, that could be an issue for the town. So that's something that I don't know enough about that side of the engineering scale to say for sure, but it's a thought that crosses my mind.
Oh, if Graves recommended or requested it, I'm not going to be happy until it happens.
I would just note that the slopes called the south side of lot 3, when you get closest to the railroad property, are proposed 3-to-1 slopes, which by even DEP standards are considered to be such that you can stabilize with just grass.
My other thought process that I've had looking at both of these sets of plans throughout the past few weeks is that where we have 2 driveways for both properties, is this something that might make sense for basically a shared driveway easement between the 2 lots, so that the majority of the driveway itself is shared, such that there's one ingress and egress out onto Snow Road? That would be something that the other 163 LLC would have to be agreeing with you guys, I'm sure, but that was just a thought I had as well. That could reduce the amount of pavement needed for a part of the drive.
My answer is, I guess, is that I don't know that we've considered that, but we'll look into it. It's an interesting idea. I'm not sure right off the top of my head if there are factors which argue against it, but we'd have to look into it.
We have some common drive rules, I believe.
Yeah.
I think that would be a common drive. So
This-
got to look at that.
This situation does look like it would be I don't know if ideal is the correct word, but this looks like it would be a pretty good situation for a common driveway to address. And so we do have, as Bob pointed out, we do address common driveways in our rules and regulations. We basically, I think we maybe even encourage them in some cases, but certainly we allow them for up to 3 residences, up to 3 buildings.
That's what I'm not sure, whether it's 3 residences or 3 buildings or how that would apply, because it's always been single family homes that has come up for.
We typically see them on single family homes.
Mm-hmm.
This looks like a situation that a common driveway ought to be a workable solution for.
Yeah, it would seem there would be a number of pluses to making it one driveway.
So that's something to look into.
Just a question. When we were talking about the grading, we mentioned the grading from the back side of these proposed duplexes. And I have no expertise in this, but from the side, when we visited the site, and it was quite a depth. So will that be filled up to make it like 4 feet, 5 feet difference?
Let's look quickly. Let's see the back. If you look at the back of the proposed duplex on lot 3, the existing grade is about 340. Yep, it's 340. So we'd be cutting that down in that area. We'd also be cutting down in the back of the other lot, and really most of the fill goes towards the driveways and the fronts of the lots. Let's find an example. Like you can see multiple points along the proposed driveway for lot 3. I see a 330 contour over about a 328 elevation. You're going to have fill on the railroad side of the proposed chambers in the ground. So I think it's kind of a case of cutting in the backyard and moving that towards the front yard.
Okay. And I think so. Just for the board and Chris, so Graves will consider all this, correct? Like all these changes will be considered by Graves Engineering when they review it, correct?
Yeah, so if the plans are revised, then Graves would receive that and provide additional comment if needed.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from the board? I think we have some public comments waiting to be addressed. So if you want to run through a couple of the Q&As and then open it up to any members of the public who care to speak. Yeah, I mean, I'm just quick looking at the Q&As here. Greg would welcome any other visit and help to coordinate it, as we did with the one visit some of us made. A question from Rich Sullivan: would the Dover Amendment preclude the requirement for 125-foot frontage? Because it says it's currently not quite 125 foot. Don't know the answer to that offhand, but let's make sure we find an answer for that unless someone knows off the top of their head.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I apologize for interrupting, but
it's fine if you would.
These lots were signed off on with the A&R. They do have the required frontage.
Okay, I should remember that because we did the A&R not too many months ago. But
August last year.
Yes. Question from Greg. The question was raised about contacting the railroad as an abutter. Has that happened? Or has any attempt been made to contact the railroad? No, they're not listed on the official abutters list, but they are clearly in practice an abutter.
Yeah, I haven't heard back, but I'll continue to try and reach out and get a response.
Well, were they sent the notice?
I believe so, but I'm still working to confirm that, and I'll continue to reach out and try to get in contact with them.
So we'll make our best effort to contact the railroad. Is that the best way to say it? I mean, you can't force them to answer, but you can reach out.
No, but you do have to, I think we do have to give them notice. And we want to confirm that we did give them notice.
Understood.
And then we have a comment from Thomas DiGiuseppe from 2 Graney, who points out that the driveway for lot 2 right now appears to go over his land, where he has an exclusive use easement. So he's just basically suggesting that that would be, assuming that's confirmed, that would be a reason for, another reason for considering a shared driveway.
We will look into that, Mr. Chairman.
All righty. And Greg asked if there's any update from last week's conservation review. That was on lot 2. I don't, has conservation started looking at lot 3 also for stormwater?
I believe conservation is, they'll be at their next hearing, opening this, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, that's right. I do, excuse me. I did make a note for myself earlier today that I noticed that conservation has scheduled both of these lots for July 21st. So I think I recall from reading their agenda that this was continued. They were scheduled for the 16th of June, but they continued that to July 21st. So I guess
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
So does that mean that we'll be looking at waiting until after them, or the applicant want to go ahead?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, that was for a stormwater permit review.
Yep.
We did not file a notice of intent. We're not within any wetland resource area buffer zone.
Yep, and we very much rely on the Concom stormwater review to satisfy us for our review. But yes, in the old days, conservation was only wetlands, but now there's stormwater too. It helps us because then we don't have to independently look at stormwater.
So there's another Q&A. I'd be happy to read it if.
Please do.
So Greg Puchel is asking, do all Graves concerns need to be addressed? If you could share more on how that works, that would be helpful. So just to describe that process, so Graves reviews a third-party engineer that's retained. So they provide comments on the plans. If there's any revisions, they would receive those and provide feedback on that. Obviously, it's up to the board to consider those revisions. Generally, I would recommend that all of Graves' concerns be addressed before the board went for a favorable vote on any decision, but I hope that kind of sums up how that process works.
That has been our practice. That
we understand that is your expectation. We understand that those are the ground rules.
Yeah, like I said, that just for the benefit of anybody who's not clear on the process, that like I said, the planning board relies on the Graves stormwater review because the planning board in its own right is required to see to it that stormwater is properly managed. And before conservation got into that business under the stormwater regulations and the stormwater bylaw, the board basically had to undertake its own through its consultant, its own stormwater review. But now we have a single stormwater review that addresses the stormwater bylaw, it addresses the wetlands bylaw in cases that include wetlands, and it addresses the planning board. So we don't like to conclude action on a project until we've seen the stormwater issues completely resolved through the conservation.
Yeah, in my case, I've always said that I need to see all the Graves, not just stormwater, but all the Graves issues either resolved or we reach some kind of closure about it before I'll vote affirmatively.
We, as you may have heard from our previous hearing, that we like to see all outstanding issues resolved. We like to see updated documents of all issues cleared up as part of the public record before we close a hearing. It kind of covers a lot of territory. So are there any other comments from the public? If anybody wants to chime in by voice or any additional. We do have another Q&A. Have all public comments posted to date been reviewed by the board at this time? I don't know that all of us have read through every one of them as of yet. I will confess that there is at least a couple of them that I have not yet read, but I do like to read all of them before we finish the public hearing process.
I've read everything on both lots up until sometime mid-afternoon today, but with the dynamics of those, who knows? I also saw the petition, which was filed.
And Mr. Chairman, just speaking on behalf of the applicant, I've read through them, and as I say, where I believe there's a good point to be made to improve the design, such as there's a suggestion about making a wider entrance onto Snow Road to make turns easier. I think we will incorporate those.
Any other comments or questions from the board at this point? As we previously noted, we're expecting this to be continued to a future meeting. Given that this comes back to conservation on July 21st, it probably makes sense to plan the next hearing to be a date after that. Our next available date after the 21st would be the 27th.
And Mr. Chair, just briefly before I make a motion on that, if the
You
applicant
need a
wants to do
request before you do anything.
Yeah,
yes, if the applicant wants to, I should say, but I would like to hear, at least before we close the public hearing in the future, from the fire department if they have any concerns about access for any emergency situation at either of these two lots in particular. That's just something I thought of right now, that where that Snow Road itself is not very wide, so if them getting a vehicle into whatever driveway and back out, that would be useful to have any input they have to share.
Right. I'm not sure that I've seen some of the comments that we expect from town departments on either or both of these, including the fire department.
Yeah, that's good.
So I know this has come up in some other hearings, and I note that we are distributing those documents to the relevant parties, to the other departments. I'm unsure if the lack of response that we've gotten in some short amount of time recently has been due to working remotely or what, but we do continue to try to solicit those comments.
Well, I wonder if we should, at the very least, make a new push. Everybody has to respond or ask the town administrator's assistance.
Yeah.
Because we have to move along, and we need those inputs, and we expect, often they come in, no comment, but they've said something. And when we don't get something at all, we don't know what's going on.
I have discussed it preliminarily with the town administrator, but I'll follow up and continue to.
If you need a motion or anything from the board, I'll be happy to make one. Just put it right on the agenda.
Okay.
So, are we waiting for someone to make a request?
Yep, I'm going to guess that the applicant is willing to request that this can be continued to July 27th.
Mr. Chairman, I thought I was getting ahead of the of things. I sent in a request to Natalia to continue to July 13, the next meeting, but you were one step further ahead of me and asked for July 27th. So I will ask you to please continue the hearing to July 27th, and I will send her another request superseding the previous one, asking on paper for a continuance to July 27th.
So moved.
Sounds like a plan. I think did I hear a motion? I think I did. Do I hear a second?
So moved.
Yes.
Moved and seconded that the hearing that the board grant the applicant's request to continue to July 27th. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Ms. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
Aye.
Wood.
Sorry. Aye.
You don't answer until I call upon you, right? Getting ahead of the game. Somebody's anxious to get this meeting done. Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. We will see you on the 27th, and we'll expect to have updated information of all kinds.
Yep. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for hanging out with us this evening.
Dave, now that we're done with that, just something to note, going back to the previous hearing, I see a webinar chat comment from Amy Marr that I don't recall being entered or referenced, and there should be a record of it somehow.
So the chat is saved as a matter of the recording, and it's included, but just for the matter, since it's been discussed here, the comment was from Amy Marr. This was in regards to the 100 Westboro Road, Afonso mixed-use development. And she just noted the North Grafton schools have a very healthy walk-to-school program that I'm sure they'd love to expand. So it's really nice to hear about all of this sidewalk access and trails. Generally, families, not kids alone, walk for 3 months in the fall and then start up again in March through the end of the year. So that was in regards to the walking path that the board was discussing at the time.
Yeah, because there'd been some discussion about, well, how much would it get used, you know, and I think that's a response to it.
Yeah, that should be included as part of the record for that hearing.
Yeah, I don't think we can assume that all of us are watching those chats and whatnot.
I will say that I noticed that comment and then forgot about it because we were under all sorts of other discussions.
I still feel that to have this process, the Zoom process, respect our full hearing process, that when a member of the public has something to say, they should be allowed to come on screen or speak. The applicant gets to be on screen and speak, and these people have to hope that we see something they type. And properly, they ought to have equal treatment.
Well, I'll just note again, I think we discussed this at the last 2 meetings, but we do have that capability to give them the option to talk and to be made a panelist, just to keep the kind of number of screens on the front screen. That's why we kind of split it as attendees and panelists, and it helps to manage kind of who's, you know, having the speaking and visual permissions at that time. So if in chat, if they wanted to be recognized, all they would need to do is say that they'd like to have that comment, and the board can recognize them similar to a regular meeting.
Yeah, well, there's, I don't know all the ins and outs, but I know that, like, if Amy, I know Amy, if she knew she could do something to get a chance to speak, I'm pretty sure she would. I don't think we're communicating that too well. I think that we ought to be able to put everyone who wants to participate in a given hearing on the screen. The others don't have to be until they get to their item. Fairness and balance.
Okay, anything else on that particular tab? We do have several continuation requests to deal with.
Yes.
Beginning with 124R North Street. The applicant has requested a continuation to July 27th. As with the project we just got done with, they are scheduled to be in conservation on the 27th would be their next opportunity.
We grant the applicant's written request to continue the hearing to July 27th at 7:30.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none.
I do have one discussion.
Yes.
Sorry. My only comment is I think we should be cognizant of the idea of if we have any shot clocks for any of these applications. As far as continuing the hearings, do we have a deadline to make a decision on any of these?
So we have been trying to request the continuance of both the hearing and the decision deadlines and be cognizant of those. I'll note that during this, we are under the relaxed standards where there are no decision deadlines or hearing deadlines currently under the governor's relaxed orders. I'll note there's a bit of a gray area of once the state of emergency is lifted, where that'll leave applications that have been submitted during this time. So that's why we're trying to stay cognizant of that. But currently there's no threat of constructive approval.
But we could be at a disadvantage when the the order exits. I will say, did we vote on July 27th yet for this one?
We're still under
We did
discussion.
not.
All right. This is about when I start saying we should not be continuing and continuing and continuing forever. It's really not a good thing. They should withdraw and come back in when they're ready. And I think we're to that point on one or two of these.
Could very well be. For now, we've got a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Ms. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. Next, we have a major residential special permit at 18 Carroll Road, also known as Abbey Woods. We actually have two. I suppose we could deal with them. We have two separate, they're listed as two separate hearings, but we tend to be processed into together. For both of them, we have an applicant's request for a continuation again to July 27th, because they also are scheduled to appear to Concom on the 21st.
I move that we grant the applicant's requests for continuation of their special permit and their whatever this is.
Definitive plan approval.
Definitive plan, both to July 27th at 7:30.
I kind of like the idea of January. So let's just put it off for a long.
2022. No, until a month after the pandemic is over.
I think I heard a second.
For the pandemic.
Second.
Yeah. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Ms. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. Next, we have 274 Providence Road, requesting a continuation to July 13th. They mainly are looking for time to review the Graves engineering result. Just for the review.
I move we grant the applicant's request for a continuation to July 13th at 7:30.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Ms. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. What's next? 80 Snow Road Lot Number 2. They are looking for, their written request, as the gentleman noted not long ago, was for July 13th, but seeing as how they're going to Concom on July 21st, he amended his request to July 27th.
I move we grant the applicant's written request to continue their hearing until July 27th at 7:30.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. We'll vote. Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Ms. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously.
And then
Takes care of all of our public hearings for tonight. Just imagine if none of these hearings had been continued, we'd be here for a while.
now just imagine July 27th.
Yes,
Well, at least one of them's the next
I
one.
won't make any predictions, but I suspect that at least some of the July 27th will end up being continued again.
Might be.
So you never know. Anyway, let's circle back to our action item agenda. Action A is approval of the open space and recreation plan. Now, of course, all of you have studied the however many hundreds of pages that plan ended up being in great detail.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I was
I
only
heard it was really good for people who know what they're talking about.
110 pages without the appendices. Anyway, the I think as I may have mentioned at the previous meeting, the draft open space and recreation plan has been submitted to the state for their approval. They came back with a conditional approval and a requirement for a number of changes to be made. Changes weren't particularly substantive, but some information missing. The open space and recreation plan team has begun work on those revisions. But meanwhile, one of the requirements of the state is that they get a letter of endorsement from the planning board, also from the select board, but that's not within our purview tonight. But what's on our agenda tonight is a letter of endorsement from the planning board. The letter has a fairly standard form. If anybody wants to discuss that or ask questions about it, now would be a reasonable time to do that.
My only two questions is that the only thing that our board is to take up from the state's letter that's attached to this plan that we have in front of us?
Yes, the specific ask of the planning board is that the planning board write a letter of endorsement. Almost everything else is adding some detail, filling in some blanks on the plan, and that's basically the staff committee that are working on the plan will take care. CMRPC has been doing most of the legwork on the plan. I took on one task of filling out the missing pieces on the open space inventory. We have some other legwork to do that will be done between staff and the Open Space and Recreation Plan Committee.
You recommend do this? You recommend this, our action?
I would recommend that the board endorse the plan.
So moved.
Second.
Moving and seconded that the board endorse the new open space and recreation plan.
I do have one question / comment for you, Dave, just to take to the open space committee. If you find it worthwhile, is on the acknowledgements. It does say Joe Layden, town planner. He was when this was being put together and constructed and everything. I don't know if that warrants any changes to say former town planner and to list Chris or not. I don't know. I just figured I caught that when I see past member for the committee, so I wasn't sure.
I appreciate the recognition, but I would suggest that since Joe did the heavy lifting on this, I would rather keep him as the thank you note.
Works for me. I just happened to catch it. I'm like, oh.
Anything else? Any further discussion of the motion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Ms. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins is going to vote aye, because if he votes no, he's in big trouble, because as the vice chair and ranking officer of the committee, I probably should be in favor of it. So motion carried unanimously. The planner will draft the appropriate letter of endorsement pursuant to this vote. And we will include that with everything else we send to the state or in the update.
Dave, I had a question.
Yes.
There is a comment in the Q&A. I don't know, is it a comment or a question? Should we address that? This was pertaining to 80 Snow Road.
Yes, so I note that Greg did sign off, but I can follow up via email. His question is, we did continue lot 3. He was asking if 80 Snow Road lot 2 is also continued to July 27th.
Asking for that to happen?
No, he's asking if it did happen.
He's asking if that was what was, if that was what was going to happen.
Yeah.
That is what happened.
Yeah.
So,
I believe the confusion there, at least from even my seat, was that the letter that was in the documents on the website said the 13th, but we continued to the 27th. So I think that was just the question.
Mr. Tetral,
that was there.
The applicant did mention when we were discussing continuation that he had previously requested the 13th and was updated. Maybe it was sort of implicit that he was talking about both projects. All righty, we have one more action item. Retroactive approval of the recommendation of the select board regarding the East Street 61A withdrawal. That was, as maybe some of us know, we were supposed to put that on our agenda for the meeting 2 weeks ago. And all of us who were involved in putting the agenda together neglected to consult notes from the previous meeting and put that on. The select board did take that topic up at their meeting last week. And so in consultation with the staff here, we decided to basically forward to the select board, the position that the board was in agreement on at the meeting where we did discuss it. And I recommended to Chris that we should, just to make sure we've got the I's dotted and the T's crossed, that the board retroactively approve this. Because we were supposed to approve this language.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the board retroactively approve the memo that was sent to the select board regarding East Street 61A.
Town meeting.
Discussion of the motion. Hearing none. Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Ms. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Mr. Robbins votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. Takes care of the action items. Under discussion items, I don't know that we have any updates on CMRPC's work on the Mill Redevelopment Overlay District. You're not aware of anything, Chris?
No, I'm not. I apologize. I think I was a little bit held up with town meeting items, and but I will again reach out to CMRPC and get an update on that.
At this point, we're just interested in the progress report. If they haven't been able to do anything, well, they'll do it when they have the resources.
Understood.
Anyway, the next discussion item is subdivision rules and regulations update. We did reach out, Chris and I, to Jeff Walsh from Graves regarding Graves taking a look at the stormwater regulations, stormwater in the subdivision rules and regulations, along with other engineering related topics that Graves might be able to weigh in on. And Mr. Walsh has agreed to meet with us on July 13th to go over some of these items. And at that time, he will, I think his response was something to the effect of that, he'd be happy to meet with us at no charge. And if there's some more extensive work that he needs to do, we can scope that out and he can provide a cost estimate. But he'll spend some time with us on July 13th, going over the various stormwater and other issues that we have raised. Those 2 emails I put together just after our previous meeting circulated to the board. So those are basically the topics we sent on to Jeff. I have nothing else tonight on subdivision rules. Anybody else has anything they want to bring up? Moving on to general business, we had no bills. We have no minutes of previous meetings. We may have a staff report.
On the minutes point, Dave, may I just mention that according to the website, the last minutes that we've approved were for November 4th, 2019.
No, that's not true.
If that's, that's what's as opposed to the website. I think we might have approved more recently, but I don't see them.
We approved
But
it.
either way,
Just
go ahead.
Yeah, we are behind on that. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, I would.
Staff resources are finite, unfortunately.
Of course.
The administration doesn't really give us enough staff resources to get everything done.
Yeah, we have legal obligations, though, I think.
We do.
And maybe we can include that in that conversation with the resource doler outer.
So, anything from a staff report perspective, Chris?
No, I'll continue to address the minutes. So I apologize for those not being done yet.
No. Sometimes stuff doesn't.
Okay, I did not see anything in correspondence of note.
I didn't see anything.
I have one interesting observation. Maybe I can know this. I thought Milford was also an opt-out town when it came to marijuana. I do see the last one that there is Upton, not Milford, Upton. There is a grow facility that's been approved in Upton, off Milford Street. It's probably 10 miles from my house here. I thought they were opt-out. Apparently not, or maybe this doesn't count.
I'm not certain, but I think they're opt out as far as sale, but they still would allow the grow and that type of thing in certain situations.
Oh, okay, probably.
Milford definitely is not an opt-out.
Sorry, Linda, this is Upton. I misspoke. Milford Street and Upton.
It was on Milford Road in Upton.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. That isn't far from you.
Yeah.
That's actually under a mile from me, I think.
Which is not to be confused with Milford Road in Grafton.
Yeah, this is Milford Street in Upton. It is past, you cross over the intersection and then go past that.
Oh, okay.
It's a little way.
Yeah, it's about 13 miles. It says 13 miles from here.
So you said that was approved already? That was approved in Upton?
That is there in the correspondence. The last one, page 9, it says notice of decision is that it's been approved with some conditions. It's a grow facility. It's non-retail.
Not retail. Yep, I noticed that. Anything else on correspondence? Any reports from planning board representatives on town committees and CMRPC?
I'll just say the Grafton Community Park failed at town meetings this past Saturday.
Well, how did you characterize?
The Grafton Community Park, as they've listed it. Super Park.
Yeah, what about it?
And yeah, how did you characterize what happened?
I said it failed at town meeting Saturday.
Oh, yeah.
Is what I said.
It lost a couple times.
Okay.
To be precise, it lost at least 3 votes.
Mm-hmm.
3 warrant articles relating to it all went against the park.
Which leaves it with no resources to hire consultants and whatnot anymore, among other things. It would have really worked out better to wait on that.
Yeah, it's not the right
It wasn't the right town meeting to bring that.
Yes.
But anyway, that's not our problem.
No.
It's at best passing interest to us, but that park would have eventually come before us, as did the previous incarnation. But now that's neither here nor there.
Don't
Yeah.
forget tomorrow's election day.
Yeah. For those few people who haven't gotten mail-in ballots, tomorrow, show up at the school and vote.
He wouldn't do a mail-in. He insists on going and voting.
I wanted to know everything up until the morning of voting that happened. I might change my mind.
Yeah.
He was not going to vote for me.
As long as we get one vote, I think we're home free on Linda.
Yeah.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Moving to seconded that we adjourn. Oh, I want to say all in favor say aye, but I can't. Mr. Hassinger.
Aye.
Ms. Hassinger.
Aye.
Mr. Venkatraman.
Aye.
Mr. Wood.
Aye.
Ms. Robbins votes aye. We are adjourned.